Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our this lunchtime webinar on empowering engineers with a real focus on what we're offering in Trinity in terms of micro-credentials in this area. I'm delighted to be joined by three of my colleagues from the Trinity School of Engineering. So, Terry, if you could just move the slide on there. That's great, thank you. So just to kind of give you all a sense of who's with us today, so I'd like to welcome John Gallagher. John is Associate Professor in Environmental Systems Modelling and is involved in our micro-credentials on air pollution and also on measuring environmental impact. You're very welcome, John. Thanks for joining us.
Orla.
Also joined by Patrick Morrissey from our Department of Civil, Structural and Environmental Engineering, who leads the micro-credential in advanced spatial analysis using GIS, which is a popular micro-credential. So you're very welcome, Patrick. Thanks for joining us. And also delighted to welcome Triona Lally, who is the Director of Industry Engagement in the School of Engineering. And Triona is kind of at that front face with our industry partners and really hearing, what their skills needs are and that we can translate that back into the offerings that we have here at Trinity, including micro-credentials. So you're very welcome, Triona. Glad to have you here. Before we kind of go into the general discussion, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what a Trinity micro-credential is and what we're speaking about here. So a Trinity micro-credential it's an accredited short piece of learning, usually around 5 to 12 weeks. It depends on the micro-credential. And so what you means is by completing the micro-credential and doing the assessment, you get academic credit called ECTS, and that depends on the length of the micro-credential, how much credit you get. And the reason for that accreditation is that over time, we plan that you will be able to stack these credits towards a Trinity award, a formal Trinity qualification. As I mentioned there, we very much look out to the community. So in this case, very looking to engineering companies and those working in the engineering sector and related sectors to see what their skills needs are and being able to translate that back into inform what we're doing and really looking at areas where it matches with areas of research expertise and strength in Trinity and how we can develop programs in that space. We're very particular about the quality assurance of our micro-credentials, and they follow a very, very formal quality approval process here in Trinity. So it means that they're delivered by experts like the people are around the table here who've real deep knowledge and expertise. So everything that you do is quality assured. And most importantly, micro-credentials are very flexible. And John and Patrick will talk a little bit in a while about their specific micro-credentials and how we've made those flexible in terms of delivery and also in terms of assessment. So just to give you a sense of in the engineering space, the type of micro-credentials that we're currently offering in Trinity, as you can see, quite a broad range of them there, quite a few starting in September and then another block of them starting in January. And you'll see Patrick and John's listed there as well. So I think what we'll do now is we'll move into the more general discussion, and then we'll come back at the end to address any specific questions and queries. If anyone listening has any questions, you'll see a little Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Please pop your question in there and we'll come back to those at the end of the discussion. So maybe to kick us off, I'm going to put an open question out to you all. So John, I might start off with yourself and really looking in the engineering space at the moment. What's the real driver for people wanting to upskill and for engineers needing to upskill?
Thanks, Orla. Thanks for having me. Really, we've been involved in a number of professional development programs for a number of years and engaging with people who are taking postgrad certs and diplomas. And we've learned from a lot of those students over the years that sometimes it's about upskilling to change position, promotion, a number of reasons like that. And I think that's where the micro-credentials also are offering a kind of similar, more bite-sized opportunity to do that. So from my experience, it has, and even from the micro-credentials over the last 2 years, it has been from discussion with potential applicants through to people who have completed the role. It's opened doors. And I suppose that's what I've seen over the last 2 years from the micro-credentials, but it's from our learnings, I suppose, from years of running professional development programs.
Okay, thanks for that, John. And we'll come back to kind of delve into your specific micro-credential in a bit more detail. But maybe, Patrick, I could ask you, in your area, what are you seeing as the main drivers for upskilling at the moment in your space?
Thanks, Orla. Yeah, so similar to what John said, I think I've from students who've taken the module or this micro-credential, they maybe it's something they were doing already as part of their job, and they wanted to get, they've learned on the job and they wanted to get some formal kind of recognition that they had gone through some training for that, and maybe to, I guess formalize what they were doing. But I do think the move towards kind of big data availability, and getting more into my kind of specific micro credential, but being able to kind of analyze that data as well, is kind of a big issue in engineering, and being able to upskill in that area, particularly in areas around kind of climate change and the biodiversity crisis. So I think a lot of those are key drivers, and people want to upskill, but also to be able to just recognize work that they're already doing, maybe do it more efficiently and formalize, get some recognition for that.
Right. Thanks for that, Patrick. And Trina, I might come to you as kind of the main industry engagement person from the School of Engineering. Is what are you hearing from industry at the moment about the challenges they're facing in terms of upskilling and in terms of the skills area?
Thanks, Orla. Thanks for having me. And yes, I should say even my own background is in biomedical engineering. I'm a professor in biomedical engineering, and many of the challenges facing industry, whether it's in this environmental, an energy sector, or biomedical engineering, or the wider engineering field, I would say is common across these fields, which is that there's often a skills shortage. Most industries, of course, want to be competitive. Ireland itself is projected to face a significant shortage of engineers, and engineers, I suppose, with the right skill set in order to be competitive. And because we see engineering itself as a rapidly changing area with many, advanced technologies and so on, these type of, whether it's micro-credentials or upskilling using, in more general terms, continuous professional development is really key. And industry really needs to see that happen in a way that it's informing that, and it's seeing it, being proactive, and I would say dynamic. So, it can be very hard to maybe be as dynamic with some of the more longer term structured programs. So things like these shorter, flexible offerings can really deliver and enable that connection between what we have as academic skills and, really in-depth knowledge in the academic field and sectors to deliver for industry what they need. And I think that even that collaboration, that networking that's enabled through those types of connections can also be key to ultimately delivering on maybe some of the more bespoke, advanced skill sets that are needed in industry to address the really, the global challenges, requiring, major requirements and innovation. Of course, there's lots of other areas, not just skills shortage. There's things like rising costs, and we all know materials, labor, and of course, key here is energy is really key to impacting profitability and ensuring that projects can come within budgets, for example, and the companies can be competitive. And because in Ireland, I suppose we're that bit more susceptible to global energy costs, a lot of people looking further now at, looking at how to increase our energy output in Ireland, be more sustainable, as well as to ensure we're using many of the more renewable sources that we've available to us. So I would say there's a really growing interest in, energy, how to improve and become more efficient and use and access energy within Ireland locally, so by the industries here. And that's all part of what's being delivered here in these micro-credentials. There's many others, I think, regulatory changes and maybe regulatory challenges. I think that's another area. And that, again, is not limited to the building sector, but of course we do have, regulatory changes adapt and change. Things like sustainability, environmental standards are changing quickly, and we need to be up to date on them. That's the same in the biomedical sector. There's a big demand, again, to keep up to date with regulatory, and it's across engineering generally. But we all know digital transformation, the need for advanced skill sets there, AI, robotics, automation, these are all requiring upskilling. And the term, sustainability, decarbonisation are, again, real areas where industry are key to know how they can be at the cutting edge, how they can use knowledge and skills available.
So, thanks for that, Trina. And I think it's important, some of the things you said there, because I kind of meant to mention at the beginning, in the School of Engineering, all our micro-credentials are at level 9, so they're at that advanced postgraduate level. So as we said, it kind of is that kind of, deep understanding, deep knowledge that's needed to kind of get that learning, get that deep learning. And one of the comments that we've had, and I'm sure John and Patrick may allude to this when they're speaking, one of the comments we've heard back from a lot of our learners is that peer-to-peer learning, in the classroom on the micro-credentials, because, you've people from lots of different backgrounds coming together. So while you're learning from the person who's teaching you, you're also learning a lot from each other. And particularly as engineering is such a broad space, learning from others who are working in different parts of the engineering sector as well. So I think that's really important. So thanks for that, Trina. I might move on and maybe start to kind of delve in a little bit deeper into some of the micro-credentials. And John, I might start with yourself, and really maybe just if you could tell us a little bit more about your micro-credential, particularly with how it's delivered and how it's assessed. And you've run a couple of iterations of yours. What feedback are you getting from your learners? Who's in your classroom?
Yes, so I suppose I might focus on the measure environmental impact
Sure.
micro-credential. I think it's gaining the most traction and interest, but also it's maybe quite different to Patrick's as well, in that it's been developed with synchronous and asynchronous content. In other words, self-learning and self-driven learning. And when you come together, or the students come together, there are more discussion or tutorial sessions. So there's discussion boards. We'd more engage with our virtual learning environment in that respect. So students follow kind of through the semester, kind of recordings and reading literature, and then come together, having reviewed that content. We have discussions around the subject matter. And because it's an online delivered module in this case, that part is so important. And the feedback from the students is that they really value that, in that it's quite organic in the way the discussions go. Everyone has an opportunity to speak, to contribute their perspectives. And the perspectives can be so varied, because actually the range of students that have taken the subject, they're looking at it through their own disciplinary lens or historically disciplinary lens. So, like, for example, the topic of life cycle assessment, or let's bring it back a step to carbon footprinting and environmental impacts. I ask all the students in their coursework to look at something that's relevant to their day job or something that they're of interest to them. So there is no boundary on the subject or the product they have to look at. So they all are passionate about that. That allows them to look to kind of be more invested in the subject matter, but they still follow the same journey. But when the discussions come together, the conversations of I don't want to get into the content, but the discussions are really, really unique and different, and everybody takes something away and appreciates everyone else's contribution. So from that perspective, it's quite an unusual delivery system, perhaps, in that there is this self-learning piece, or maybe Patrick has some overlap, but the discussion groups and discussion sessions are really interesting. No two sessions are the same, and in the few iterations I've ran it as well. And then they still have opportunities to provide input to me prior to the session with the discussion boards. We can have follow-up sessions. But I think what was been important for me is that the coursework can align with either their day job or their passion or interest, so that they have that additional invested interest. And that has produced a wealth of fascinating case studies as coursework submissions, which I actually love. I get to read so much variety. It's not all the same thing. And then students clearly put more effort into it as well. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of in a very, hopefully that covers everything.
Yeah, and can I ask John, just in terms of who's in the classroom, who's taking the micro-credential? Are they all engineers? Are they predominantly coming from one area, or what's been your experience to date?
No, it's been such a varied mix. So I've had a few, as Patrick alluded to, students, postdocs and PhD students, not just from Trinity, but from other universities who want to upskill in this area and then translate it into research. I've had public sector organizations as well as private entities who are looking either to, um, uh, well, in one case, someone is looking to change role and expand their role, especially in that world of sustainability. You can kind of, some people have ended up in sustainability roles, but now want to upskill.
Mm-hmm.
And then new businesses are looking to get a step ahead in the world of this life cycle assessment and offering, sustainability reporting for organizations. So, yeah, I'm working with entities who are taking their first steps as a company and want to be at the cutting edge of standards and implementing standards and best practice. You've got some who are large organizations developing new teams. And then you have some people who are also, I mentioned earlier, taking a career shift and change. And this offers an area that they see as maybe growing, but very little expertise out there.
Yeah. That's great, John, and it's great to hear that diversity in the classroom, and as you said, the richness that brings to the learning and the peer-to-peer learning. It sounds like you're learning from your students as well through their assessments, yeah?
Absolutely. Like just to be able to pick up a report on a certain type of product or service that this company are organizing, and they've looked at it through this life cycle lens, and they've done some calculations and developed recommendations or outcomes. Without their input, without their case study, it would be a kind of my insight. So and then the students learn from one another because of the semester of discussions and knowledge sharing and perspectives. So no, it's I'm very lucky to have this module in that the student can bring their own subject matter to it, and I think they enjoy it more for that. And then they go back to their business. Some of them have gone back and shared the information, and it's leading to change. So I have follow-ups with some people, and that's even better.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the whole things about micro-credentials. We hear that in every sector that we offer micro-credentials in, that feedback from people when they go back into the workplace saying, actually, that really added value to what I do, or that really helped me in my job or career progression or whatever. So thanks very much for that insight, John. It's very interesting to hear that. Patrick, I might move over to yourself and maybe if you could tell us a little bit about the micro-credential you're involved in and how that's kind of delivered and how it's assessed, and any feedback that you've had from your learners so far.
Yeah, no problem, Laura. So the module, the micro-credential is, I guess, it's a little bit more traditional teaching, I suppose, compared to what John has just outlined there. There's some elements of what he mentioned, but there's a short lecture series where I kind of introduce the topic, and some people will be starting with some basic understanding of GIS, and some people or maybe are quite advanced and they just want to formalize it, and some people will never have known nothing about GIS. So it's kind of to get everyone up to speed and in the same kind of level playing field. And then to go with that, then there's a series of kind of in-depth worked tutorials where you're kind of guided through some skills in GIS where you have to work through it, and you're given different data sets, and you have to work through these. Everyone works through the same thing. And then the main form of assessment, there's a few aspects to the assessment in terms of kind of a bit more of an examination, a digital examination, but the main element of the assessment is project. And I guess this is where it's more similar to what John mentioned there. This allows the students, the learners, to be able to actually take the unique data sets or problems that they have access to from wherever they're coming from. And I have previous students, micro-credential students, who've come from a medical background. So they're looking at using GIS to analyze epidemiology or whatever it might be, through to natural sciences where they're looking at bird migration patterns and nesting and foraging. To I have had people coming from a complete business background who have nothing to do with engineering, and they want to just look at supply chaining and products and bringing efficiencies there. And then yes, into more traditionally kind of engineering, environmental engineering aspects, trying to look at mapping environmental data, and so there's a whole and lots more as well. And the people come from local authorities to state agencies, private companies. I have PhDs and postdoc students, and so there's a wide range of people. And the project being the main form of assessment is where you have to go off, and I get you to take something that's in your field, in your area, in your hopefully something related to your work, where you've got a unique problem and unique data sets. And then I want you to go ahead and take that and do some form of analysis on that using the skills that you've learned. And then I challenge students to take it further. And I can't teach everything in GIS in the short time that you have together. So I want you to go and actually do some element of self-learning to take that further and find some other tools. And so I learn from the students in that way too. And these projects are hugely unique because they're all in different areas. They've different data sets and different problems that they're trying to analyze, and then they bring different unique solutions to them, or different types of GIS tools that I didn't even know exist. So it's really, like John said, really interesting to read these projects at the end and see what the learners have come up with.
That's great. And I think what's really jumped out from what you've said there, Patrick, and a bit about what John has said, is the breadth of experience that people have bringing into the classroom on micro-credentials. Everyone's coming from a different place, and that makes it a really, really rich learning environment, I think, which is just great. And I suppose that's what we wanted to try and achieve through micro-credentials. And do you find that you're finding in your own micro-credential, Patrick, are people kind of on a continuum of learning, or are you finding there's some people who have been out of education for a while and are using micro-credentials to kind of dip their toe back into the water?
Yeah, I think I actually saw both last year, in terms of there were kind of people who are more advanced in their career and they were trying to upskill and get back into education, or learn a new skill to, like John said, maybe advance their career, or just reinvigorate themselves a little bit, or maybe move to a different part of their company, or if they're in a state agency or a local authority. And then I've seen others like who are quite early in their career as well, so who want to just, I guess, help their career progression a little bit at the beginning, and have some kind of unique skills that they can bring. So it's quite a mixture. And like you mentioned earlier, Orla, the learners are able to kind of interact with each other during those tutorials. They're all in PC labs together, and they can talk to each other and brainstorm, and they bounce ideas off each other. So it is great to see that.
That's great. Thanks for that, Patrick. And one of the questions that we kind of, and I'll put this out generally, and a lot of you I know also are very active in the research space, is about the level of awareness of micro-credentials across employers and across companies. It's one of the things that we're kind of always very interested in. I see a lot of very self-motivated people, as Patrick and John have said, who said, I'm actually really interested in a subject and I really want to go and do something. And I suppose what we're trying to do here at Trinity is work on the other side with employers, to kind of, even those that were working on within the research and innovation space, to say, actually, this is what we're doing as well in terms of upskilling opportunities, and really, getting their input to inform where we go. And we're finding that a lot of our micro-credential learners are actually being sponsored by their employers to kind of bring on from what John and Patrick said. They really say, look, it's really worthwhile investing in this and sending you to do a micro-credential, because, as we said, the assessments are so related to your work. There's a direct impact back into the workplace. And I think that's something that we're starting to really see a couple of years into micro-credentials across all our areas, that direct impact in the workplace and that it's having. And it's really encouraging, I think, employers to sponsor more and more learners. So if anyone is on a call and said, I don't think my employer is going to have any clue what a micro-credential is about, go and have a conversation with them, show them some of the stuff on our websites. Feel free to reach out to anyone around the table here. We can help you develop a narrative. But we definitely are seeing more and more employers very open to sponsoring their staff to come and do micro-credentials with us here. Before we move on, I just wanted to just remind anyone listening, if you have any Q&A, please put them into the Q&A box there and we will address them. But I just suppose we're coming up to 25 past 1, just if there's any final comments that John, Patrick or Trina would like to add to the conversation here about the real value of micro-credentials and participating in them. If there's any final comments anyone would like to add. Trina, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I suppose just to reiterate what you were saying there around the learning, the benefits, that it's not just to an individual, but it is to the wider community. And maybe to say that when people engage with, whether it's micro-credentials or any really continuous professional development, they usually kind of bring that back, and it informs a culture of learning and collaboration within their company. And of course, we're open to, we're all doing research in depth here. Many of these can even lead on to people wanting to do maybe an industry PhD or do further development around master's level and so on. It could end up with collaborative projects with many of the experts in the academic field here, around then driving and informing research and development within a company. So, this could just be the beginning of a journey into an area that is, advancing a skill set, perhaps really just starting off just looking at what is your potential for career growth or opportunities, but could lead on to, many further collaborations and connections between yourself, that individual, or the company.
Yeah, so and I think that's a really good point, Trina. I know some of my own staff have done micro-credentials across Trinity, and the connections that they made there, we're actually using some of those now to progress some other work completely unrelated to the micro-credential, but it's a great opportunity for network building and to build on a lot of that learning. And one thing I do want to say, because we do know that for a lot of people, as Patrick said there, that for some people, they're just coming maybe back into education after being out for a while, or maybe for some people, it's maybe their first dip into maybe third level education in a long time, that we do have a lot of supports across Trinity in terms of academic learning and development supports that our micro-credential students can avail of. So in terms of academic writing and study techniques and all of that. So don't be afraid, kind of going, oh my God, I haven't been to university in a long time, or I've never been to university. We've lots of supports here to help you along the way. And you've heard from John and Patrick who are delivering these. We've lots of great people delivering micro-credentials as well. I don't see any questions in the Q&A there, so we might move on. I just want to talk a little bit about cost and about fees, because I know we always have a lot of questions about that. So I think we may have a slide just at the end, if you want to put that up there. Just bear with us a sec. So we talked a lot there, and John and Patrick have talked a bit about their micro-credentials, and we didn't want to take the time today to go into the detailed subject information. So all of that is available on our website. And if you scan the QR code that's there on the screen there, it'll bring you to micro-credentials in the School of Engineering, and you can delve into those and get a lot more information. All the ones that are starting in September are currently open for applications. So people are actively reviewing those applications, coming in and making offers, and they will be open, a lot of them, till end of July, early August. So please take time to look at those. The micro-credentials starting in September in the School of Engineering will be entitled to a fee subsidy. So that's a government fee subsidy, which brings the cost of the micro-credential down quite significantly. And that's available to Irish residents. So again, click on the QR code, you'll find all the eligibility requirements for the fee subsidy. But it ranges from 50 to 80% of the fee, depending on the subject area. So all that information is available there. So that's only running to the end of October at the moment. We're waiting to hear, fingers crossed, from the government, it'll be extended. Hopefully it will. But for the September intake, if you are interested, the fee subsidy is there. Please apply and avail of it now. So that kind of brings us to the end of our short discussion today. I want to thank Triona, John and Patrick so much for sharing your insights and experiences. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. This has been recorded and we will be sending out to all of those who registered, and it'll be available on our YouTube channel as well. And if you have any questions at all about micro-credentials, you can email us at microcredentials@tcd.ie and we'll be able to deal with any of your queries, because I know some of you may have specific things that are relevant to your own circumstances. So a big thank you to everyone, for all the panel participants, to everyone for joining us. It was great to have you here, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye bye.